Hello, dear friends. Welcome to Mindfulness for Beginners. I hope you're happy. I hope you're peaceful. We got a slightly different format this episode, slightly longer format as well. I'm having a chat with a friend of mine, a good friend of mine called Mikey, who's a great advocate for mindfulness and for the environment. She's been a great friend to me, and she was the person who actually introduced me to the practice. And my friendship with her has made a huge difference to my life, a huge positive difference. We had a really good chat. We covered a few things, learning how to practice, our favourite ways to practice, and we did have a guided meditation which you can join in with at the end. So, without further ado, here is my chat with Mikey. Okay, so I'm here with Mikey, and we're going to talk for a little while about meditation and mindfulness, and then we're going to do a guided meditation together at the end. So, Mikey, do you want to just let us know, how did you initially get into mindfulness?
I started getting into mindfulness through listening to podcasts of Dharma talks. And these were based in a meditation center in America, and the podcast was called Audio Dharma. And it would be a mixture of wisdom, of Buddhist wisdom, and also some guided meditation. And because it was recorded at an actual meditation center, even though you usually just hear one voice, the facilitator, you had the feeling when you were meditating along that there was a whole hall full of people sitting there at the same time, and it was quite powerful. And eventually, I went to a sangha for the first time with you, and that was Wake Up in London, and that was a really amazing place for me. I think we first went there 5 years ago, 2014, 2015.
Yeah, it's something like that.
And through that, I got to practice silent meditation, the Thich Nhat Hanh guided meditation. It's a Thich Nhat Hanh Plum Village sangha, walking meditation and mindful sharing, and it became a really positive thing in my life.
Do you want to tell the people who are listening to this who maybe haven't been along to a sangha, a mindfulness group before, what some of the sharing practice, the Dharma sharing practice is about?
Yeah, so it's my favorite bit. So we tend to we do this in the second half of the meeting. So already we've done the coming into ourselves, we've done the sitting in silence, we've maybe had a reading to reflect on. And people sit around in a circle, and there's no pressure to say anything at all. But if you feel moved to speak, you bow, and you talk from the heart. And the idea is that you can just say whatever you want to say, and you say it to the group, and nobody responds to you. People are listening. There's a practice, they call it an active listening. So you're really taking in what that person is saying. And the beautiful thing about it is you're taking in what that person is saying, but without feeling, oh, I've got to respond to this. I've got to think of the right thing to say. And so that takes the pressure off, and you can just really hear them and be present with whatever they are going through. And if you're the person speaking, then you get this opportunity to say something that's going on with you, and to speak about it quite deeply, but without worrying that you're going to be asked some difficult follow-up questions. And it's a really beautiful practice. And when the facilitators are setting it up, they often really encourage people who haven't shared before to say something. and also to kind of listen in to how you're feeling, and if there's a kind of nervous energy, if your heart is beating faster, then maybe there is something you need to say to the group. And I found it. I'm a mildly autistic person, and I've had some really tough times in London, and I felt very alone at times. And I found it this really beautiful experience of being able to really connect with other people, but without the pressure of having to make small talk or having to worry whether or not people liked me. And so I got these little insights into people's lives. And I think one of the things I found most valuable is when other people were talking about having a tough time. And sometimes if you're lonely and if you're sad, you feel like you're the only one in the world and everyone else is out there having some amazing time. And actually it just brings you back to the fact that we're all suffering in our own ways, and that suffering is common between us.
Do you know, it's one of my favorite practices as well, and I'm only just realizing now. I mean, I have social anxiety, and I'm only just realizing that one of the reasons why I enjoy it so much is for the same reason that you said, is that first of all, you can listen without having the pressure of, what do I say, what's the right thing to say in this situation, but then also being able to, whenever you bow and you share something from your life, is being able to tell something about yourself, whether that's a happy thing that's going on or a difficult thing that's going on, or a part of the practice that you're wrapping your head around, without the pressure to try and express it in I'm kind of doing air quotes here, but the right way, or in a particular way, or in a way that's right for the person that you're speaking to. And I think it's a really beautiful practice as well. And I remember whenever we went along to that first meeting, and we were sitting around in a circle, and I was kind of thinking, what's going on here? This is a bit weird. And then once I was listening to a few people speak, and then I wanted to join in as well, because it's such a lovely way to have a conversation without feeling pressure to think of the right thing to say, or something clever to say, or something funny to say. So yeah, I really enjoyed that as well.
Yes.
So thinking about your life and mindfulness, do you think that mindfulness has had an impact on your, I suppose, your mental health, or how you live your life? What difference has mindfulness made for you?
So my mindfulness practice and my meditation practice are very much a work in progress, and never as regular as I would like, though I think lots of people feel like that. I think it's made a couple of differences for me. I think it's made it much easier for me to develop a practice of checking in about what is actually happening. And so, especially in situations where you find yourself irritated or angry by a situation, I find it much easier to sort of stop and work out what is going on here. What is actually causing this upset inside of me? Is it fear? Is it sadness? Is it fear of rejection? And I've found that really, really useful. I found it a great way of just of connecting with nature when I'm outside. I think my interest in what's happening in the environment and my mindfulness have kind of gone alongside each other, and so I take great joy in noticing what's happening in the seasons. So at the moment the daffodils are out in our garden, and the flowers are the leaves on the trees are just beginning to bud, and different trees are in different states. I like noticing the birds that I see. I get great joy from the classic London pigeon, or from the group of crows that live out on the field near my house. So I think it helps me really really connect with the earth, in a way that I find really really beneficial. Um, and the other bit of it is how it helps you relate to other people. So there's a practice that they do at Wake Up, where you introduce yourself with a weather metaphor, which we could have done today. And
Yeah.
I have brought that into team meetings, and I found it really valuable. And it's really valuable because quite often in a team meeting, you sometimes start with asking people how they are, and people's default is that they're fine. Or you ask people how they're doing, and what they tell you is a list of the things they're working on. And actually, if you allow people to use a weather metaphor, then it's easier sometimes to say it's a little bit cloudy, or it's a little bit drizzly, or it's a little bit windy or foggy, or whatever it is, and without needing to kind of get into that, and for people to explain why that is, it is giving people an opportunity to kind of touch in with themselves. And yeah, I've found that a really nice way of bringing a little bit of my practice into work sometimes.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to all of that, particularly around being able to notice nature. I do remember on the walk from whenever we had that first meeting to wherever I was getting the tube from, and it was just just like noticing everything that was going around me for the first time, rather than being in an anxious state where I'm thinking ahead to this or that, or worrying about being in a crowd. And it's great, whenever you're out in nature, just to be able to look at a tree, really look at a tree. I remember in the kind of few days afterwards, going for a walk at lunchtime in St James's Park, and really looking at the trees that are there, the color and texture of the bark, the arrangement of the branches, the canopy above that, the ducks, the scary pelicans that there are, and they are terrifying, the pelicans in St James's Park. But it's really being able to do that is I think is a real gift of the practice.
Yes, I think there's also something around feeling the ground underneath your feet, or even the chair underneath you, and touching in with that can be really helpful when you're in a situation of anxiety, because it just brings you back to something physical. And yeah, there's lots of small things like that I think have been really helpful and have added to the general harmoniousness, I think, in my life.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to for the next interview. I'm definitely going to have to remember to do a weather report at the start. That would have been a great idea. Should we do it now? Actually,
Yes, let's do it.
okay, you go first.
So my weather's sunny.
I would say my weather is a little bit turbulent at the moment. It's great to be able to check in and just notice, in that mental landscape, but also physically, how is that manifesting itself in your body as well?
Yeah.
So, you were talking about the sharing aspect, but is there another kind of favorite part of the practice that you have? A favorite way that you like to practice mindfulness, or a favorite guided meditation that you have? Is there something that you come back to again and again?
So one of the things I really enjoy doing, and I tend to do it as part of an organized group rather than on my own, is walking meditation, which is a thing I'd heard about but never really fully understood. until I did it with other people. And I think the way that I practice walking meditation is you walk very, very slowly, and often you're in a room, and you're walking around in a circle, or maybe a couple of interlocking circles. And you're walking so slowly that you're taking one breath for every step, and you're syncing up your breath and your steps. And I find it very, very relaxing. And sometimes you might recite something to yourself. So one of the things that we recite is, I have arrived, I am home in the here and the now. And I really, really love that. And it was only relatively recently I was listening to Thich Nhat Hanh give a talk, a recorded talk on YouTube, and he was talking about what those phrases meant to him as an exile from Vietnam. He was talking about realizing that home was a thing within him, even if it may be that he could never go back to Vietnam. And I think that's made it even more powerful for me.
Yeah, I really enjoy the walking meditation as well. It's probably the part of the practice that I do most regularly. So at lunchtime, even though there's somewhere within the building that I could go and get something to eat, I do like to walk out to the shop. It takes 10 minutes there and 10 minutes back, and just do exactly what you just described as I'm walking there, taking a breath with each step, breathing in, breathing out. Sometimes it's breathing in, I know I'm breathing in, breathing out, I know I'm breathing out. And sometimes it's the verses that you just said, but it's just such a lovely way to take a break from the day. And actually you can do it anytime that you want. If you're in the office, whenever you're going up to get a cup of tea, you can do that, walk into the kitchen and walking back again, or maybe at home as well. But it's a lovely way. And what I find is that it slows you down over time. So the more that you do it, actually you find that you're rushing less from one place to another, and your mind isn't rushing to that place as well. And it's a great way to build up a ritual of mindfulness practice. Get that 10 minutes a day in.
Yes, it's lovely.
So we've talked about kind of the practice of mindfulness, but have you found that practicing mindfulness has changed, how you look at the world?
Yeah, I think it has in a few different ways. So there's sort of principles in Buddhism and what Thich Nhat Hanh talks about, and in the ideas behind mindfulness, that really resonate with me, particularly as somebody who is increasingly interested in environmental issues. There's a bit in his book, Love Letter to the Earth, where he says, "We often forget that the planet we are living on has given us all the elements that make up our bodies, the water in our flesh, our bones, and all the microscopic cells inside our bodies all come from Earth, and we are part of the Earth. The Earth is not just the environment we live in. We are the Earth, and we are carrying her within us." And we both come from a very rational, analytical background. And yet increasingly I find that these ideas of interconnectedness and interbeing, as it's sometimes called, resonate with me. It reminded me of the old joke. What does the Buddhist say to the hot dog seller? Make me one with everything. And
I haven't heard that one before.
increasingly, like the the idea that, that I am connected to the earth, and that I am, it's all the same. It's all the same atoms, right, that are circulating through, whether it's the carbon cycle or the nitrogen cycle. And so that's impacted on the way I have paid attention to the earth, and what's happening. There's this idea in Buddhism of seeing what is real, what is really happening, right view, and that's definitely meant I've got involved with more activism, and that activism has often involved Buddhist practices. It's involved some of the practices that we've talked about. So a few things I've done recently have involved meditating in public, but instead of in a nice kind of Quaker meeting house in a quiet bit of London, instead we've been doing that, as part of a much wider bit of climate action. So you might be in Trafalgar Square and the samba bands are going, and there's a helicopter and there's chanting, but I and a group of Buddhists would get together once a day and sit in a circle in the twilight, in the drizzle, and there'd be that moment of coming back to ourselves and of connecting with the ground under ourselves, and of checking in, and of reminding ourselves what was important. And often we have those moments, and we'd start, and I'd sit down, I'd put my hands upturned on my knees, which I find a really great posture for sort of like holding yourself open to the earth. And 20 minutes later you open your eyes, and the number of people has like doubled, trebled, because there's quite a few people for whom like, they see that happening. They see people just sitting there, and that peace and that silence and that space is really valuable. So I was doing something very similar to that last week at the British Museum as part of a protest, and there's a movement called Silent Rebellion, and as part of that, we get together and we sit in shopping centres for like an hour and a half once a month, and we're not disrupting anyone. It's very, very peaceful, but it's just a way of saying publicly, I'm going to sit here in this space in public, and I'm going to meditate on what is happening to the world, and I'm going to meditate on the pain that it causes me. And you're welcome to join. And there's a few people giving out leaflets. But there's something really powerful about taking that meditation into a public space. So I've really enjoyed doing that. And I've also, it feels like some of these movements are really, there's Buddhism, Buddhist ideas around mindfulness that run through them. So sometimes when we go to meetings, we'll start by sometimes there's a practice of active listening, just like we spoke about. So we would you get into pairs, so slightly different. You get into pairs, and you have 2 minutes to just like speak about what's going on with you, and the other person doesn't respond. So they might sort of, they might make eye contact or they might nod, but they're not there to commiserate or say, oh, I had the same thing happen to me. You just listen. And it's amazing because you turn up sometimes to these meetings and you've had a stressful day and it's been difficult getting there and you've been rushing and rushing and rushing and rushing. And it just gives, it's like a change of state almost. It's it's a moment to stop and work out, actually, how are you feeling? How are you feeling about your day? How are you feeling about what's happening next? And then after 2 minutes, you swap and you do the same thing, and you might not then speak to that person again in the meeting, but I really like that. I find myself increasingly drawn to spaces and places where people are making room for that kind of pausing and that kind of introspection. And so for me, there's the two go hand in hand, and I enjoy the linkages between them. It feels like a really important part of my spiritual practice to be able to acknowledge what is happening to the world, to call attention to it, but also to be peaceful with it. So that's how my practice, I think, has been unfolding over the last couple of years, and I think will continue in the future.
Yeah, I can definitely feel that as well, particularly around interconnectedness. And one of the areas of practice, mindful eating, has I find it very difficult. Actually, I did a podcast episode on it, but it's not something that comes naturally to me because I want to shovel the food in my face as quickly as possible. But the thing that I find is that the podcast episode was about eating a piece of chocolate and where all of that comes from, and doing that with a meal gives you insight and makes you think about where all of that has come from. And I come from a livestock farming background, and if you're eating a meal that has meat in it, it does make you think about what was the process by which the animal ended up on my plate. And I have found that I eat less and less meat. I wouldn't say I'm not completely vegetarian yet, but I'm mostly vegetarian at this stage. I think that mindfulness has kind of seeped into that way of looking at the world, seeing interconnectedness and being aware of the impact that you have. So I really recognize what you're saying.
And it's a very gentle way of making change. It's not blaming or shaming. It's because it comes from inside of you. It's actually about kind of checking in, or what are your values and what does feel true and important to you. There's a sort of underlying principle in Buddhism, and I'm not an expert, about the idea of Buddha nature, that everybody fundamentally is a good person who is trying hard. And so mindfulness gives us a way of connecting with that. And I really like the idea of starting with that as your position. And it's helpful in connecting with other people.
That's definitely helped with me because, if I'm out outside, I'm anxious, I'm stressed, and somebody does something that I don't like, then I get irritated with them. And it's really helped me to think that, this is not a bad person. This is a person who's suffering and they're doing the best that they can. And seeing everybody as somebody who's doing, even Donald Trump, seeing everybody as somebody who is suffering and is making their way through life as best they can, I've found is a really helpful way, because otherwise the alternative, and this is definitely how I used to be, is to simply be angry at the world. And, I don't particularly want to be angry at the world anymore. And I think you're absolutely right that it's a framework that enables change without wagging a finger at people. It's simply raising people's awareness, and then the choice is up to them.
It reminds me of something we haven't touched on in this podcast, which is the idea of loving kindness. And I had a meeting a few weeks ago with somebody senior, and this person is sometimes quite difficult to have meetings with. And I'd been doing some loving kindness meditation, and I wrote at the top of my notebook, may you be happy,
Yes.
may you be healthy, may you be peaceful, because I wanted that to be my intention to this person, and I wanted to be able to physically touch in with that intention. That is my intention for this person. I like them, not to get sort of, oh, in a place where I'm sort of self-defensive and insular. Um, yeah, so that's similar, I guess, to what you're describing.
Yeah, I hold that in my back pocket for whenever I'm driving to work and back again. Is that when somebody cuts into my lane without indicating, which I may have mentioned once or twice in the podcast, but when somebody indicates cuts into my lane without indicating, may you be happy, may you be peaceful, may you be healthy, and live a long life. And I found that it's very, very helpful. Okay, I've really enjoyed that conversation. So, Mikey, would you like to facilitate a guided meditation?
Yeah, I'd love to do that.
Okay, so I'll start with three sounds of the bell. If you've listened to the podcast before, then if you just become, aware of your posture for a moment, aware of your thoughts and feelings for a moment, aware of your breath for a moment.
Breathing in, I know I am breathing in. Breathing out, I know I am breathing out. In, out. Breathing in, my breath grows deep. Breathing out, my breath goes slowly. Deep, slow. Breathing in, I feel calm. Breathing out, I feel ease. Calm, ease. Breathing in, I smile. Breathing out, I release. Smile, release. Dwelling in the present moment, I know it's a wonderful moment. Present moment, wonderful moment.
Taking a moment to stretch your back and your legs if you need to. Noticing any changes in your thoughts, in your feelings, in your body. And feeling some gratitude towards yourself for taking a few moments to focus on your well-being. Thank you, Mikey.